What if I told you the lost decades were a lie? Everyone thinks Japan died in the 90s. But the truth is, they just went invisible. From the phone in your hand to the car in your driveway, Japan doesn't need to be seen to own your future. Imagine a civilization that committed suicide. That is what the world told you about Japan in the 1990s. They called it the lost decades. History books will tell you that the Japanese economic bubble burst in 1991. They will show you charts of a stock market that crashed by 80% and never recovered. They will tell you about the suicide forest, about lonely deaths, and about a generation of young men who locked themselves in their bedrooms, refusing to come out. Western economists wrote Japan's obituary. They said the island nation, once destined to rule the world, had become a museum, a relic of the 20th century, a warning to the rest of us about what happens when an economy stops innovating. And for 30 years, you believed them. You looked at Silicon Valley. You looked at the rise of China. You looked everywhere but Tokyo. But you were wrong. We were all wrong. While the world was busy writing Japan's eulogy, Japan was busy rewriting the rules of the global economy. They didn't die. They went underground. They realized that in a hyper-globalized world, being the face of a product, like making the TV set or the smartphone, is a fool's game. So, they made a strategic retreat, a calculated withdrawal from the spotlight into the shadows. Today, Japan does not want to be the king. It wants to be the kingmaker. It doesn't want to sell you the phone. It wants to own the technology that makes the phone possible. This is the story of the greatest economic camouflage in history. This is how Japan turned nuclear ash and economic ruin into an invisible empire that controls your future. To understand the master plan, we must first understand the betrayal. The year was 1985, the Plaza Accord. At the time, Japan was an unstoppable juggernaut. They were buying Rockefeller Center. They were buying Hollywood studios. American car manufacturers were being decimated by Toyota and Honda. The United States, fearful of Japan's economic dominance, forced an artificial appreciation of the yen. It was an economic nuclear strike. Japanese exports were crushed overnight. The factories that made cheap radios and cars could no longer compete on price. Panic set in. The bubble burst. The party was over. But in that darkness, a new philosophy was born. The Japanese conglomerates, the Keiretsu, realized they could no longer win a price war against rising powers like South Korea and eventually China. So, they stopped trying to compete on the surface. They pivoted. They began to shed their consumer skin. They stopped caring if you knew their brand names. Instead, they focused on something far more dangerous, the choke points. A choke point is a specific technology, material, or chemical that is incredibly difficult to make, but absolutely essential for the modern world. The goal was simple: make yourself irreplaceable. If you make a laptop, anyone in Shenzhen can copy you in 6 months. But if you make the chemical glue that holds the microchip inside the laptop together, and you are the only one who knows the formula, you own the market forever. This aligned perfectly with the ancient Japanese spirit of monozukuri, the art of making things. While Silicon Valley was obsessed with moving fast and breaking things, Japan doubled down on moving slow and perfecting things. They spent 30 years perfecting the invisible. And now, the trap has been sprung. Let's look at the evidence. Let's look at the device you are probably using to watch this video. Your smartphone. Apple takes the credit for the design. Taiwan's TSMC takes the glory for manufacturing the chips. But TSMC, the most important company in the world, lives in constant fear. They don't fear American sanctions. They don't fear Chinese competition. They fear a Japanese company you have never heard of, Shin-Etsu Chemical. Shin-Etsu controls the global supply of semiconductor silicon wafers and specialized photoresists. Photoresist is the light-sensitive chemical used to print circuits on chips. It is the blood of the digital age. Without it, TSMC is nothing. Samsung is nothing. Nvidia is nothing. Japan controls virtually 100% of the high-end EUV photoresist market. In 2019, during a trade dispute, Japan restricted exports of just 3 chemicals to South Korea. The entire Korean semiconductor industry, a pillar of the global economy, almost collapsed in 2 weeks. That is power, real power. And it's not just chemicals. Look at the machines that build your machines. Deep in the forests near Mount Fuji, hidden from the public eye, lies a yellow kingdom. Fanuc. They build the industrial robots that assemble your Teslas, your Fords, and your Boeings. Their operating system is the industry standard. Their motors are in every factory from Detroit to Shanghai. If Fanuc turns off the switch, the world stops manufacturing. Period. Consider the industrial rice, the multi-layer ceramic capacitor, or MLCC. A modern electric vehicle needs 10,000 of them. A 5G smartphone needs 1,000. Who makes the best, smallest, most reliable MLCCs in the world? Murata Manufacturing, another Japanese ghost giant. They don't need to build the electric vehicle. They just need to tax every electric vehicle built by anyone, anywhere. This is the Galapagos syndrome, turned into a weapon. They evolved in isolation, creating technology so advanced and so specific that the rest of the world has no choice but to pay the toll. But Japan's control isn't just physical. It is psychological. History tells us that to truly conquer a people, you must conquer their minds. You must make them love you. In 1945, the West conquered Japan with fire and steel. In the 21st century, Japan conquered the West with a plumber and a yellow mouse. Nintendo, the Disney of the East. But unlike Disney, which is currently struggling with identity crises and box office flops, Nintendo is stronger than ever. Pokémon is the single highest-grossing media franchise in human history. Think about that. It has generated more revenue than Star Wars and Marvel combined. A country that was culturally isolated for centuries has managed to plant its mythology into the brains of every child on Earth. This is what they call soft power, but that term is too weak. It is cultural hegemony. Through anime, through video games, through the concept of cool Japan, they have rehabilitated their image from a war aggressor to a cultural superpower. When the Japanese Prime Minister appeared at the Olympics dressed as Super Mario, the world cheered. They export their values, honor, perseverance, harmony, packaged in colorful entertainment. It is a bloodless colonization, and we welcome them with open arms. So, the next time you hear a news anchor talk about Japan's stagnation, the next time you hear about their aging population or their refusal to embrace change, look deeper. Look at the components inside your camera. Look at the robots in your car factory. Look at the game console in your living room. Japan didn't lose the last 30 years. They invested them. They built a fortress of intellectual property and critical technology that no other nation can breach. They realized that true power isn't about being the loudest voice in the room. It's about being the one who controls the microphone. They accepted the humility of the shadow, so they could wield the power of the puppet master. The world thought Japan was sleeping. In reality, it was waiting. And now, the sleeping giant is awake, and it owns the keys to the future. This is not a story of decline. This is a story of evolution. Japan hasn't gone anywhere. In fact, they are everywhere. This is just the beginning. Subscribe to see what happens next. Thanks for watching.